What's up, everyone? I'm a 26-year-old amateur documentary filmmaker, and after digging deep into the JFK assassination for my last video, I'm back. Since releasing that doc, a lot of you here on YouTube and on Facebook dropped comments suggesting that James Files might have been lying. Some said the real killer was a Secret Service agent named George Hickley with an AR-15, accidentally or intentionally firing the fatal shot. And honestly, after more research, I get it. There are serious questions about Files, but I'm still not fully throwing out his story. Why? Because Files' testimony lines up pretty damn well with verified CIA operations and known Chicago mob connections. And the truth? It might finally break wide open later this year, with the release of November 1963, a new JFK biopic film promising to tell the real story of the Chicago mob and the CIA's role.
3 Hollywood stars are descending on Winnipeg to film a mob movie about the assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy. According to IMDb, November 1963 will star John Travolta and Mandy Patinkin alongside Dermot Mulroney. The crime thriller will focus on JFK's assassination over the course of 2 days. It's told through the eyes of Joseph Giannakounen, the brother of real-life mob boss Sam Giannakounen. Details at this point are pretty scarce. Manitoba Film and Music confirmed it is filming in Winnipeg. However, they don't know when crews are coming to town.
But now we're shifting gears from Dallas to Los Angeles, from JFK to MLK to RFK. Because after JFK fell, his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, became a major target too. And just months after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, RFK was gunned down in a hotel pantry in Los Angeles. And here's the bombshell. There's growing evidence that lone gunman Sirhan didn't act alone, and there was a second shooter. And maybe, just maybe, the same people who silenced MLK silenced RFK too.
James Earl Ray killed Martin Luther King, which was another lie. And
Sirhan didn't shoot Bobby Kennedy.
The guy that shot Bobby Kennedy, did the kill shot on him and Martin Luther King.
Same guy.
Is still alive today, and don't you dare say his name.
So that guy's still alive.
He's still alive today.
He's down in Miami, Florida.
In Florida.
Yeah, good friends with George Bush Sr., and he's down in Miami, Florida.
And
he killed Martin Luther King, not James Earl Ray.
And same with Sirhan.
Sirhan wasn't the one that made the final shot that hit Senator Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
It was the Thane Cesar. I think it was a Wackenham security guard that went in there.
I was out of the country at that time. I get a good alibi. I was in Central America. You ain't gonna blame me for that one.
So now in the year 2025, fueled by the recent FBI file releases by President Donald J. Trump and explosive new accusations by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. himself, naming Than Eugene Cesar as the real killer.
The first shot that Sirhan fired hit Paul in the head. Paul survived, and he just died less than a year ago. And he spent the last 20 years of his life trying to get Sirhan out of jail because he did not believe that Sirhan killed my father. And I just sort of dismissed what, over years, I'd hear that Al Lowenstein, who you may remember, was trying to get my father, Sirhan out, because Al Lowenstein was a congressman, a great friend of my father's, started the Dump Johnson movement. He was later assassinated himself. He became a congressman, was killed. But he fought for many years to get Sirhan out and get the case reopened because he did not believe that my father was killed by Sirhan. But I never looked into any details. I just assumed there were 77 eyewitnesses. Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy.
Right.
And then Paul Schrade made me come over to his house one day and read the autopsy report. How did he make me? He told me, you have to do this. And because he was such a close friend of my father's, and because he himself had been shot, I felt like I couldn't say no to him. And when I sat down and read the autopsy report, it became clear to me, as it would to anybody who read that report, that Sirhan could not have killed my father, which is what Thomas Noguchi, the coroner, the most important coroner probably in American history, concluded also and said in his autobiography. And here's what happened, the short story. Sirhan fired 2 shots at my father. He was 5 feet away. There was, as I said, there was absolute mayhem in the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel. My father just won the primary. He said from the stage, and now it's on to Chicago, which was where the convention was. Then he walks off the stage and he went into a route that was not expected. He was led into a route through the kitchen, which he was not supposed to go to. And waiting in the kitchen, in an ambush, was Sirhan standing in front of his steam table. And as my father approached the steam table, Sirhan fired at him 2 shots. One of those hit Paul Schrade. The other one went past my father's ear and hit a door jamb behind my father, a wooden door jamb, from which it was later removed by the LAPD. Sirhan was then grabbed by 6 men in a dog pile, and he was backed onto the steam table. And his hand, Rayford Johnson, who was a great friend of mine, one of my father's close friends, he was the decathlon gold medal winner in 1960. He was one of the people who grabbed it, and he was the one who actually grabbed his hand. And he said that Sirhan, who's a tiny little man, I've been to meet him and visit him in prison. He said the tiniest little guy. But Rayford said he had superhuman strength, and he could not get that gun out of his hand. And Sirhan now was pointing the gun away from my father and fired 6 more shots. So there's 8 shots in the barrel. He fired 6 in the other direction, the opposite direction from where my father was. All of those shots hit people. So we know who they hit. We know what happened to all of those bullets. So he was a distractor. And the real shooter was behind my father. He was a man called Eugene Thane Cesar, who was a security guard who worked for Lockheed. He was a CIA operative. He was a vocal racist who hated the Kennedys. And he had been the one who led my father through the kitchen toward the ambush. He was holding my father's arm. He drew his gun.
Right.
And my father was shot 4 times from behind. One of the shots passed through the shoulder pad of his, harmlessly through the shoulder pad of his coat. The other 2 were into his back, and then one behind his ear, which was the fatal shot.
Did you shoot Bobby Kennedy intentionally or accidentally?
Neither.
Now, over the years, a lot of people have, when they talk about the possibility of a second gun at the Bob Kennedy murder, your name comes up. Why do you think that is?
Because I was the closest person to him that had a gun.
And you have been falsely accused all these years. And how does that make you feel? How has this affected you, your life?
Well, you almost have to go into hiding in a way. You don't want anybody to know where you live, especially the news media. They've tried to find me. I've had Inquirer, I've had the Globe, I've had a lot of people try to find me, and basically they couldn't because I didn't make it very obvious where I was, because I didn't want to be harassed by anybody.
There were 77 eyewitnesses who saw that Sirhan was never behind my father. He was always in front of him, always about 5 feet away, and all the shots that killed him. Now,
it seems so open.
He fell, and as my father fell, he must have known he was being shot from behind, because he turned around and grabbed off Cesar's clip-on tie. And you can see pictures of him lying on the floor, and he's actually lying on top of Cesar with the clip-on tie in his hand. And there's pictures of Cesar without his tie on. Cesar pushed my father off him and stood up. He was knocked down when my father fell onto him. He stood up and was seen with his gun. The police did not confiscate the gun that night. And they asked him what he was doing, and he said he drew the gun to shoot at Sirhan. And, and then that's the beginning of the story. And then Cesar made a series of changing, deceptive, lying statements after that in the different times he was questioned over many, many years.
We're diving deep, following the facts, and maybe, just maybe, solving RFK's murder once and for all. It's June 5th, 1968. RFK is fresh off a major victory in the California Democratic primary. He's the front runner, and if he wins, he's on a direct path to the White House, the last hope for the Kennedy legacy. But in the shadows, plans are already in motion. According to RFK Jr., lurking just off stage is Than Eugene Cesar. Cesar worked for a classified division of Lockheed, a major CIA contractor, just weeks before he landed this security gig at the Ambassador Hotel. And after the assassination, Cesar quietly disappeared, moving to the Philippines, far from U.S. law enforcement reach. The LAPD unit that investigated RFK's assassination was run by active CIA operatives. They destroyed thousands of pieces of evidence. Turns out, the FBI and CIA had been actively targeting both King and RFK under secret programs and operations. When King broke ranks on Vietnam, he wasn't just a civil rights leader anymore. He was a threat to the war machine, same as RFK when he promised to end the war in Vietnam if elected, or JFK when he went against the military-industrial complex. Two men, same year, both murdered.
A sniper is only a coward, not a hero. And an uncontrolled or uncontrollable mob is only the voice of madness, not the voice of the people. Among free men, said Abraham Lincoln, there can be no successful appeal from the ballot to the bullet. And those who take such appeal are sure to lose their case and pay the cost.
Now let's go back to November 22nd, 1963. It started just as another day in America. At that same moment, Robert F. Kennedy, the president's brother and attorney general, sat by his pool laughing with friends until the phone rang. It was J. Edgar Hoover. No emotion, no hesitation. He just said, "The president's been shot. It may be fatal." Then, "The president is dead." And he hung up the phone. RFK crumbled into Ethel's arms, and in that moment, everything shattered. Within minutes, Bobby was asking the questions the government didn't want asked. He called out Langley directly. "Did your outfit have something to do with this horror?" No straight answer back. He suspected the CIA. He suspected the mob. He even suspected forces within his own government. The murder of John F. Kennedy wasn't just the death of a man. It was a message. After JFK's funeral, Bobby was distraught. From that day forward, Robert F. Kennedy lived with one purpose: to find the truth and to take America back. He carried the torch his brother dropped. He grew harder, he grew wiser, but he never lost the dream.
Do they know about Martin Luther King?
We got it up the own, it can be handled.
Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in.
Early in the morning of June 5th, Bobby decided to deliver an acceptance speech. These would become the last public words ever spoken by Robert F. Kennedy. In the Ambassador Hotel, the unimaginable happened. Not that RFK won the California Democratic primary, but that once again, promises of peace were obliterated by a cascade of carefully calculated bullets intent on shattering the American dream. After winning the primary late in the evening of June 4th, 1968, Robert Kennedy addressed his supporters in the embassy room of the Ambassador Hotel shortly after midnight. These were his final public remarks.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
RFK was escorted away through the hotel kitchen. He was protected by former FBI agent William Berry and two former athlete bodyguards, Rayford Johnson and Rosie Grier. Bobby was shaking hands with the hotel staff and was in the process of shaking hands with a 17-year-old busboy, Juan Romero, when the shots rang out.
Bobby said, "Is everyone all right? Is everyone all right?"
Chacon says Romero's life changed immediately following the assassination. The teenage boy who rushed to help Kennedy became a man consumed with guilt, feelings he should have saved Kennedy's life. Together, Chacon and Romero visited Kennedy's gravesite at the Arlington National Cemetery.
He and I were conversing. He excused himself and he walked over to the grave. And that's when he started talking to Bobby and saying, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I wish I could have done more to save your life."
A Kennedy and a California busboy linked forever by an iconic photo.
Are we to believe that Sirhan could empty his revolver, hit 6 different people with those 8 bullets, reload his gun, and fire 5 more shots? As Kennedy lay seriously wounded, Romero pressed a rosary into his hand. FBI agent Berry placed his jacket under Bobby's head. Bobby asked, "Is everybody okay?" Romero tried to assure him, "Yes, everybody's okay." Kennedy turned his head towards Paul Schrade, lying near him, and said, "Everything's going to be okay, Paul."
He had his victory speech. So they came down the service elevator, which is behind the kitchen. I remember extending my hand as far as I could, and then I remember him shaking my hand, and as he let go, somebody shot him. I kneeled onto him and put my hand between the cold concrete and his head just to make him comfortable. I could see his lips moving, so I put my ear next to his lips, and I heard him say, "Is everybody okay?" I said, "Yes, everybody's okay." I could feel a steady stream of blood coming through my fingers. I had a rosary in my shirt pocket, and I took it out, thinking that he would need it a lot more than me. I wrapped it around his right hand, and then they wheeled him away. I remember looking at my hands, and there was dry blood in between my nails. Then I received bags of letters addressed to the busboy. There was a couple of angry letters. One of them even went as far as to say that if he hadn't stopped to shake your hand, the senator would have been alive. So I should be ashamed of myself for being so selfish.
As they did regarding the John F. Kennedy assassination, Life magazine would once again misrepresent the facts. The infamous photos taken by Boris Yarrow were edited for the cover of Life magazine in order to obstruct the facts. Incredibly, critical evidence of another shooter behind Robert F. Kennedy, Than Eugene Cesar, was manipulated for this cover. As he was falling from his wounds, Robert Kennedy pulled the clip-on tie from Cesar, perhaps as a reactionary instinct after being shot from behind. However, in the Life magazine cover, it has been airbrushed out, a minor detail, but if the image were printed with the tie, logically the American people would be asking, whose tie is this? And there exists a photo of Than Eugene Cesar without the clip-on tie. If the American people were given this information in 1968, they would have immediately asked, why is this security guard's tie lying next to Senator Kennedy, and who is this guy? When one considers a possible conspiracy in RFK's murder, thought should be given to what organizations may have wanted him dead and what they stood to gain with RFK out of the way. At the front of the line, the American military-industrial complex, the CIA, and Texas Big Oil, all of whom were realizing unimaginable profits thanks to the Vietnam War.
I have some reservations, as I've stated them before, about some aspects of the war. But I think that the United States is making every effort to try to make it possible for the people of South Vietnam to determine their own destiny.
Are you saying that you approve of the activities of the Diem regime?
What activity?
You improved that they put 6 million in forced prison camps, and that the American advisors did nothing but help them in this.
I challenge your history again. There is absolutely no record that 6 million people were put in concentration camps. They only have 16 million to begin with.
Had RFK gained the White House, the cash cow for all three would disappear. The war would end, tens of thousands of American lives would be saved, and the CIA's position as a major power in world intelligence would be severely compromised since RFK was convinced of their involvement in his brother's murder.
I do not run for the presidency merely to oppose any man, but to propose new policies. I run because I am convinced that this country is on a perilous course, and because I have such strong feelings about what must be done, and I feel that I'm obliged to do all that I can. I run to seek new policies to end the bloodshed in Vietnam and in our cities, policies to close the gaps that now exist between black and white, between rich and poor.
And in her 2018 book, author Lisa Price said she believes that RFK's assassination was the result of a conspiracy orchestrated by Robert Mao, an undercover operative of the CIA's Covert Actions Division.
91-year-old Robert Mayhew, the longtime right-hand man of billionaire Vegas mogul Howard Hughes, has died after battling cancer and heart problems. Mayhew was born in 1918 and joined the FBI in 1940 after college. In 1947, Mayhew established a private investigative company and counted the CIA among his clients. His work on the agency's secret assignments eventually led him to Hughes, who hired him full-time in 1966 under a unique job description.
He had appointed me as his alter ego. He told me that he wanted me to come up with a plan whereby when I spoke, the whole world would know that it is Howard Hughes speaking.
Than Eugene Cesar's full-time job was a maintenance plumber at Lockheed Aircraft Plant in Burbank. This position required a security clearance from the Department of Defense. A co-worker of Cesar's at Lockheed told researchers Turner and Christian that the plant was a CIA-controlled U-2 spy facility, and that Cesar often worked in a restricted area that only special personnel had access to. At the time of RFK's assassination, Cesar had been employed as a security guard for the Ace Guard service, where he had worked for one day only the previous week. Cesar was intentionally placed by the CIA to escort RFK through the pantry to the planned press conference, away from television and reporters' cameras. When Sirhan drew his gun, according to his own statement, Cesar drew his handgun as well. Witnesses corroborated his testimony, and one witness, reporter Don Schulman, claimed that Cesar fired his gun at least once, in a complete and alarming breach of normal police procedure. The LAPD chose not to examine Cesar's pistol, although he owned a .22 caliber firearm. Cesar claimed he was carrying a Rome .38 revolver on the evening RFK was shot. He could have easily been carrying the same caliber revolver that he knew Sirhan would be equipped with.
There was one other person who claimed to have been a witness, a guy by the name of Don Schulman. And did you know Schulman at all?
No, I did not.
Now, did you shoot Bob Kennedy?
No, I did not.
Don Schulman, one of our KNXT employees, witnessed the shooting that we've been telling you about. Kennedy was walking toward the kitchen. That was his route out of the ballroom. A man stepped out of a crowd and shot Kennedy. Kennedy's bodyguards fired back. The suspect now in custody at the Ambassador Hotel.
They did contact me at CBS as they did everyone else, but as soon as I told them what I told you earlier, they weren't interested in me.
Cesar stated that he did draw his gun, but never fired his weapon. He also claimed that he was knocked down after Sirhan's first shot and was unable to retaliate and fire his weapon. Cesar told investigators that he did own a .22 caliber Harrington and Richardson pistol and showed it to LAPD Sergeant P.E. Osteen on June 24, 1968. This conflicted with his original claim that he sold the gun to one Jim Yoder prior to the assassination. In October 1972, an ex-FBI agent, William Turner, tracked down Yoder. Yoder showed Turner the receipt for the H&R pistol, dated September 6, 1968. contracting Cesar's claim that he had sold the weapons months before the assassination. The receipt included Cesar's signature. Nonetheless, the LAPD eliminated Cesar as a suspect without further investigation. Cesar was considered a right-wing extremist who supported Alabama Governor George Wallace, who was often called racist by the press, and despised the Kennedys. Cesar was part of a CIA assassination team formed to eliminate Robert Kennedy. He had worked for Hughes Aircraft, part of Howard Hughes' organization. This was confirmed by John Meyer, a top aide to Howard Hughes. On June 13, 1968, Meyer wrote in his diary that Cesar's name was mentioned as one of the security guards on duty at the Ambassador Hotel on the evening of June 4th. He wrote, "I remember Thane from his trips to Las Vegas, where he was meeting with numerous gaming people, and was introduced to me by Jack Hooper, an associate of Bob Mayo." In an interview with Lisa Peace, John Meyer told her that after hearing the radio broadcast, he called someone and discussed the fact that I knew Thane Cesar, who had been at the Ambassador that night. The next day, Meyer was summoned by Maru. Mahu was furious and wanted to know why I was checking up on Thane. I was stunned at his anger, and he told me that if I kept discussing this matter, he would see that I was no longer around the Hughes operation. Mahu did not want anyone to know that he personally knew Thane Cesar. The next day, Meyer informed Peace. Jack Hooper told me that he was speaking with Bob Mahu, and I was never to mention Thane Cesar's name or the Bel Air Patrol. Prior to the assassination, Thane Cesar was working for Robert Mahu, a man with known connections to the Mafia and CIA. During Peace's investigation, she had discovered through two prominent online public record database services that Cesar's profession was contract agent for the CIA. This information would seem to confirm that Thane Cesar was in fact a CIA operative and more than likely assassinated Robert Kennedy upon orders given by Robert Mahu. That story sounds eerily similar to the James Files story.
Considering your position relative to Kennedy, could you have fired your gun at him without being seen?
Yes, I could have.
Is it possible that your gun went off accidentally?
No.
Okay, once again, did you shoot Bobby Kennedy?
No, I did not.
12 people saw him when he got up. He pushed my father's off of him and stood up, and he had his gun drawn. And when the police came, he said he had pulled his gun to fire at Sirhan. But they never confiscated his gun. And then he lied about the gun later. And the gun has now been recovered. It had a very weird journey. It was stolen. It was thrown into a lake by some teenagers. The lake was drained, and there's a guy now. The gun is now being tested, but it's clear that Sirhan was involved, and there's a long, long backstory to that, to what might have happened that I'm not going to talk about or speculate because it's a long story. But that he did not actually fire the shots that killed my dad.
RFK Jr. pointed the finger at Thane Eugene Cesar, a man with CIA-linked ties at Lockheed, who was seen holding Kennedy's elbow, guiding him, positioning him right into the line of fire.
He ended up leaving the country. He was very outspoken against my father. He believed that my father would start a race war, and my father would put blacks in charge of the country, and he hated blacks. And he ended up leaving the country. He died about 1.5 years ago in the Philippines. Before he died, I tried to go over there and interview him. He originally said that it would cost me $10,000, but he would do it. And then when I got close to going, he said it's going to be $15,000. And then a day before I left, he said it's going to be $25,000. So then I thought he's playing a game.
Yeah.
And I ended up not going.
This is a totally premeditated, political, terrorist assassination.
Sirhan was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to die in California's gas chamber. But when the state briefly outlawed capital punishment, his sentence was commuted to life. And that meant every few years, he'd come up for parole.
I believe that I am innocent of this crime and that I did not commit this crime.
For more than 5 decades, Sirhan Sirhan has maintained he doesn't remember the shooting.
I did not shoot Robert Kennedy or kill him.
He says somebody else did it. He says, well, maybe.
You don't buy it at all. I know he's a murderer, so it's not a big leap to believe he's a liar.
Cesar fled to the Philippines soon after, and may have even gone to Miami, where he died without ever facing a trial. But today, thanks to voices like President Trump, Robert Kennedy Jr., and filmmaker Oliver Stone, the shadows are finally lifting. The same dark forces that destroyed the dream of Camelot destroyed the hope for real civil rights change, and they almost got away with it. But not anymore, because now we have RFK Jr. carrying on the Kennedy legacy. So this time, history will remember the truth. I think we just solved RFK. Next, we gotta solve JFK Jr.
What has violence ever accomplished? What has it ever created? No martyr's cause has ever been stilled by an assassin's bullet. No wrongs have ever been righted by riots and civil disorders. A sniper is only a coward, not a hero, and an uncontrolled or uncontrollable mob is only the voice of madness, not the voice of the people.
Now you are on the path of politicians. Well, I've got a long time to think about it, Joe. You have a family of political know-how, but have you committed yourself to the political future? I don't think so. I think I'll probably do some form of public service. I think everybody in my family really feels that a lot of my father's goals and ideals are worth pursuing. But I wouldn't necessarily restrict myself to politics. We can't all go into politics. Everybody ultimately lives in a neighborhood, in a community, or in an ecosystem that, in this point in history, is probably deteriorating. And on a street-by-street, house-by-house, mountain-by-mountain, river-by-river basis, we have to start taking control of our own lives and saying, we are not going to let this happen.
For some people, the ultimate goal in life has been becoming the President of the United States. Would you like to be the President of the United States?
I really don't believe I would, Rona, but I would like to see somebody as the President who could do the job, and there are very capable people in this country.
Most people who are capable are not running for office. Most men are frightened of politics today.
It is a shame, isn't it?
Yes.
It is a shame. The most capable people are not necessarily running for political office, and that is a very sad commentary in the country. They had major corporations and they had this and that, but they are not running for political office.
Among free men, said Abraham Lincoln, there can be no successful appeal from the ballot to the bullet. And those who take such appeal are sure to lose their case and pay the cost. Violence breeds violence. Repression breeds retaliation. And only a cleansing of our whole society can remove this sickness from our souls.
And this is a tribute in honor of Bobby. I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts. And they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy.